Hey, fourth graders, guess what? Today's going to be a good day. We are doing input-output, which we did in third grade, so it's going to look kind of similar, okay? So, let's read our directions at the top. It says use the input-output machine to complete the table. So they have like a little robot guy there, okay? So they're going to, as you can see, they're doing this one first. So they're putting in 10 into the machine. Do you see the 10 up here? So they put it into the machine, and then it goes down to here, and it says to subtract 9. So I have 10 minus 9 equals 1. So they did that one for us, didn't they? So now we're going to pretend that we're putting 13 in the machine. Up here, put 13 in, and then put it in the machine, subtract 9. What did you get? Can you write it right here before me? 13 minus 9 is 4. So maybe you don't want to write the number up on the machine every time. So what you can do then is, that every time you're going to be doing a minus 9. So it's almost like you're pretending it says minus 9, minus 9, minus 9, and then put your answer over here, okay, on this side. But the little machines just help you understand that there's an input and then there's an output, which is the answer, okay? So once you figure out the rule up here, sometimes in third grade it would say rule up here, and it would say what's the rule, and you would say minus 9. Okay? So once you figure out the rule, okay, we can actually write it right up here for this chart. Okay, figure out what the rule is. So let's look. Now, this is kind of a really crazy machine, right? Because he's got two little robots here, doesn't he? So we're going to put a number in. Our first number is 1. So put a 1 up here. And then I go into my machine, which is times 4. So what are we at right now? We're at 1 times 4, okay, is 4, right? And then it goes into this machine, and it says 4 divided by 2. Okay, what's 4 divided by 2? And that's going to come out right here. What is 4 divided by 2 equals 2. So then I know that my output or my answer is 2. So sometimes there's going to be 2 rules. On the first one, we only had 1 rule. It was minus 9. Now we have our rule is times 4. But then it is, once you figure that out, you go times 4, get that answer, then you have to divide by 2, okay? So it's a little trickier. You have to do a times 4, get that answer, okay, and then divide by 2. So, yeah, we can maybe, so you're going to need to, so let's look at this next one. I have a 7 times 4. Okay, so 7 times 4. Figure that out, and then you're going to do a divide by 2. Okay, so 7 times 4 is 28, and then 28 divided by 2. How many 2's can fit into 28? That's going to be my answer. So you need to do 2 things on this one. You need to do a times 4. Get that answer, then you need to do a divided by 2, okay? 2 things. So you're going to take this number and times it times 4, get that answer, and then divide by 2. Every time you're going to do that, okay? Times 4. And if it helps you and you want to write the number first, but then you need to divide by 2. You can even go over here if you want to finish it out that way. 4 times 4 equals that. divided by 2 equals this. Times 4 equals this. Divide by 2 equals this. Okay? 2 steps on that one. So you got a few to finish there. Okay? Then down here, they're using inverse operations. Okay? We're going to talk about what that means. So it says use the given operation or its inverse. And I'm going to explain that in a second, to find the missing values. So we can see that our rule is add 3. Okay? So we know when they say inverse, that means subtract 3, depending on if you're finding the number on the bottom or the number on the top. So let's do one together. So I have, zoom in a little bit here. So add 3. So if I'm going down, it's going to be a plus 3. Okay, so 1 plus 3, and then write that here. That is 4. Okay, so the same thing here on this one. But I want to talk about the next one because look at the numbers there on the bottom. So we're going to go inverse, or kind of we're going to go backwards. Okay, so instead of plus 3, we're going to do what? We're going to do minus 3 when we're figuring out the top number. So if you're going down, you're going to plus. If you're going up, you're going to minus. You got that. Same thing down here, but I have divide by 10. Now, if I want to do the inverse of divide by 10, that is multiply by 10. That's the inverse. Okay? And the inverse up here was 2 minus 3 instead. All right? So when I'm going down, I'm going to do what they say here. I'm going to divide by 10 and put my answer here. Okay? To do the inverse, if I'm going up, I'm going to multiply by 10. So for this answer, I have to times 10. So if I'm doing the bottom number, it's divide by 10. If I'm doing the top number, it's times 10. Okay? So 20 divided by 10. How many 10s are in 20? 2. And then 6 times 10. You're good at your 10s. Write that up there. So just remember, bottom number, divide. Top number, multiply. Finish those up and then meet me on the back side of this, which would be 226. All right, I don't want to give, this is going to be very similar to what we just did, guys. So they're going to give you a rule for each table. All right, so let's look at the first one. Okay, it says a function is a mathematical relationship that is shared by 2 sets of numbers. A rule describes the relationship. A table is a way to display a function. So let's look at the first one. My rule is subtract 1. So what's the inverse or the opposite of subtract? What would the opposite of subtract be? It would be addition. So if it's either going to be subtract 1 or it's going to be plus 1, depending on which way you're going, if you're going up or down. Okay, so if you're trying to figure out a bottom number, you're going to minus 1. If you're trying to figure out a top number, you're going to plus 1. Okay? All right, same thing on all of these guys. Okay, so what's the opposite of add 5? What's the inverse? The inverse would be minus 5. How about multiply? The opposite of multiply is divide. So if it says multiply by 11, it also, the inverse would be divide by 11. Okay, so whatever's in the blue, think of blue as bottom. That's always going to be your bottom number. But if you're figuring out a top number, it's going to be the inverse. Okay? All right, I think you'll be good on those. So I'm looking down at number 22. I'm looking for a top number, so I know it's going to be divide by 11. So 77 divided by 11. okay? So if it's a bottom number, go by what's in the blue, and if it's not, you do the inverse. Now, same thing down on the bottom, but this time, remember when the robot had two things you had to do? That's what we're doing here. So they're going to tell you two things to do in your rule. You're going to multiply by 3, then subtract by 1. Notice it's all bottom numbers, okay? So take that number that's on top, okay? All right, let's do a harder one. Let's do 7. All right, let's do 7. So then I have to do two things. I have to times by 3 and subtract 1. So I'm going to go 7 times 3 first. That was 21. And then the last thing I have to do is minus 1 equals 20. So my final answer is 20. These are kind of fun, actually, right? All right, so same thing. You just have 2 steps down here as well. Take that number, divide by 2, add 3. Super fun. All right, good luck, guys.